From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, this is Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Riley Smith. In today's show, Dustin visits with National Pork Producers Council Vice President Todd Marotz. Mark has an update on the new World Screwworm situation with USDA Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service Associate Administrator Michael Schmoyer, and I discuss white mold management with Ken Dybert of BASF. Now let's welcome in our hosts, Mark Magnuson and Dustin Huffman.
Welcome into the Wednesday edition of Iowa Ag Matters here on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Mark and Dustin with you here today. And Dustin, as we look at the marketplace, at least here this morning, a little bit of a pullback after we saw those big gains on Monday. Yesterday, things evened out a little bit. We saw some slight losses, and that was pointed to as maybe some turnaround Tuesday action, which we oftentimes see, and then also maybe just some continued uncertainty on exactly what the trade deal entails with China, and still waiting for more of those details to come through. So maybe traders just a little bit apprehensive. And now here today, some more losses, although not anywhere near those big gains we saw on Monday, but a slight turn down in the markets here today.
Yeah, but when you couple that with yesterday's slight turn down as well, that does have a little bit of an effect. And now during the morning, we did see some larger double-digit losses in soybeans. They pulled back as the morning went on, and we're only down maybe about 5 or 6, maybe even 7 cents in some cases. But we did see them at one point 11 and 14 cents lower. Now, that doesn't mean things can't change before the end of the day. Once again, you know, these markets ebb and flow throughout the day. But yeah, definitely not what you want to see happen. But, you know, it's something you're going to have to deal with markets. But yeah, there's not too much uncertainty and a lot of planting progress. And of course, numbers coming out throughout the week. We're going to be watching to see how that happens and just see how that plays out. There's just so many variables involved right now.
And I'm going to be interested to ask Jim McCormick of agmarket.net when I discuss the grains with him in just a little bit here about some of those details with China and exactly what we have learned since last week's meeting, because there's been some reports that, you know, some discussions about things not related to agriculture, some details that have been released about China buying some Boeing planes, things like that. And we're still, of course, you know, very hyper-focused on the ag trade details, but those are a little bit few and far between right now because we had the U.S. side releasing that fact sheet from the White House. But other than that, we're kind of combing through the details and trying to figure everything out.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you also have to remember, agriculture is not the only facet of the economy affected. As you mentioned, the Boeing purchases hopefully will be a big stepping point in going forward with this. That was just, again, agriculture is just one part of these negotiations, and I think people need to really work on, realizing that. I did get some good news here. We got information from Smithfield Foods. They've awarded over $280,000 in impact grant funding to 12 nonprofit organizations. And these grants build on more than $24 million that Smithfield's already invested last year and helping out. And 2 of those projects are here in Iowa, Mark. We want to see Crawford County Hunger Fighters in Denison, Iowa. That funding they got will strengthen bulk food distribution efforts and a backpack program that provides meals to students on the weekends. And the other one was a Siouxland Soup Kitchen in Sioux City, Iowa. Their new commercial kitchen equipment will allow the organization to continue preparing and serving meals to those facing food insecurity. Now, of course, these projects are all over the country, these ones, but these were highlighting the 2 Iowa ones, and it's great to see some of those efforts being rewarded and getting some support from some of these companies.
Certainly is. And to see, you know, that upgrade in some of the facilities, that can go a long way when you're trying to continue to help people out that are in need. You need those facilities upgrades as well. It's not just getting the food sent in, it is having that infrastructure behind it and then being able to distribute that food to the public.
Yeah, that it is, Mark. And so congratulations to those 2 organizations, those 2 programs to get that grant from Smithfield. Let's go ahead and jump into the grain markets now. As I said, Jim McCormick of agmarket.net talking with Mark Magnuson.
Joined today by Jim McCormick of agmarket.net. Jim, what's happening with the trade in the grains?
Oh, good morning. We're seeing a little bit of mixed trade today. We've got the corn and bean markets under a little bit of pressure. We have the wheat market trading relatively steady in Chicago, up a few cents in the wheat as we begin the midweek trade.
And Jim, when you think about everything that we've seen this week in terms of price action, when we had the big update on Monday, a little bit of a turn back yesterday, was that a pretty natural turnaround Tuesday?
I think it's a little bit of turnaround Tuesday. Part of it is we're still trying to get a little bit more clarity of what actually was agreed upon in when the President Trump was in China last week. The reports out of the White House suggest that China is going to buy additional 17 billion worth of ag goods above and beyond the anticipated 25 million metric tons of new crop beans they're expecting them to buy, pushing their total purchases near 30 billion. If I calculate it right, that would bring it back to where they were before the trade war started here this past year. But the Chinese, Mark, have not confirmed any of that. This morning or overnight, the Chinese minister did confirm that China was going to purchase 200 planes from Boeing, but they made no mention of the agricultural purchases. He did kind of say, hey, we're looking to lower our tariffs if the United States lowers their tariffs by roughly $30 billion each. So we're waiting to get some hard comments numbers. And with that, it's just causing the market to take back some of that surge we saw early in the week on optimism. So maybe a little bit of buy the rumor, sell the nervousness that the facts aren't 100% locked in yet.
And in terms of trying to figure out those details as well, when it comes to soybeans, do we have any more clarity there?
No, we don't. I mean, the clarity we've got right now is they bought the 12 million old crop. They're anticipated by 25 million metric tons for this calendar year. That's anticipated the new crop. If they're going to start buying that 25 million metric tons of beans, as the White House has stated, I would assume sooner or later they're going to have to come in and start getting those purchases done, as it's hard to believe, but we are running the clock out of the month of May very, very fast.
And in terms of the planting conditions, the crop conditions report on Monday, did anything catch your eye?
Oh, no. In general, looks pretty good. We're getting off to a pretty good start. I mean, right now, this morning, we do have some clients in the Northern Plains kind of driving around to see if any of their beans got clipped. Some pretty frost freeze numbers came out overnight, so maybe a little bit of light damage there. Now where we're looking at where we're going to be at as we go into the latter half of May into June, it's interesting. The 6 to 10 day and the 8 to 14 day are calling for above normal temperatures. But where I'm at, Northern Illinois, which has been very, very wet this spring, actually you're calling for below normal rainfall in the 6 to 10 day and the 8 to 14 days. So something we need to kind of monitor as we go into the full spring.
Every county fair has that special person or family. They are there before the gates open and long after the lights go out, helping families with projects and pitching in wherever they're needed, never asking for recognition. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, along with Wiffles Hybrids, is honoring them with the Heart of the County Fair Award. 6 winners will be recognized locally and at the Iowa State Fair, with a plaque, cash prize, VIP passes, and food coupons. Don't delay. Nominations are due June 1st. Visit iowaagnet.com to nominate today.
Back on Iowa Ag Matters, as we're going to keep following along with the developments in the new World Screwworm situation as those cases keep creeping closer and closer. We heard a little bit from NCBA earlier this week, and now we're going to hear from the folks at APHIS at USDA with Mark Magnuson.
There are over 1,800 active cases of the New World Screwworm in Mexico, and 15 of those cases are now less than 100 miles from the U.S. border. Rear Admiral Michael Schmoyer, the Associate Administrator of the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, says that sterile screwworm flies are strategically being placed in areas where they are needed most.
Right now we're dropping flies mostly on the Gulf side, the northern Gulf side of Mexico. We have about 50 miles that these flies are also being dropped over the U.S. border in Texas. And so when we make these decisions, we look at a variety of different data based on modeling, and we predict, we forecast, and we assess based on a variety of different things, including the temperature, the humidity, the altitude, and all of these different aspects, as well as looking at data that we get from, number one, cases that Mexico shares with us, as well as, number two, data that we get from traps in the area as far as surveillance. All of those things come together and help us to determine where is the best use of our flies and how can we distribute what is a limited number that we have at this moment.
Schmoyer is also the director of the New World Screwworm Directorate, and he says that predictive models are being used to try and project where sterile flies should be released by the USDA.
So our modeling, and we do this in conjunction with the Agricultural Research Service at USDA, looks at predictive analytics to forecast and model where we think the fly is going to go next. And so we take into consideration things like temperature and altitude and humidity, but we also take into consideration all of those different things that are data sources for us. And so by and large, the majority of these data sources are provided to us by our partners in Mexico. What we do is we anticipate anticipate not where the fly is right now, but really where can the fly be moving towards. And so in a overleaning of preparation, we lean forward aggressively as far as where we disperse our flies, beyond where we know the flies to be, but where they could be in a few weeks.
Schmoyer says U.S. officials are prepared for action if screwworm crosses the U.S. border.
So the time that we have invested in our collaboration with state partners, including Texas, and looking at things like tabletop exercises we have done together, how would we address this situation if X happens? Who would be at the table if Y was the situation? Those tabletop exercises are tremendously important that we've done with our state partners, number one. Number two, we have the new World Screwworm playbook that is out. Version 1.0 is out. Version 2.0 is just about to be out. That has been developed with feedback and content from our state partners as well as industry partners and other federal agencies. This is that element that helps to be able to say, boots on the ground, if this situation happened, how would we handle it?
Your local radio station brings you the local news you depend on. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network complements that with ag news, weather, and market updates tailored for Iowa's farmers. Together, we deliver the best of both worlds, local connection and industry expertise. It's all to keep you connected with the heartbeat of the heartland, the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, connecting rural Iowa with the news that matters to you.
Hi, my name is Ethan Smith, and I've been a certified crop advisor in Iowa for about 6 years. The Iowa CCA program is valuable to me because it helps keep me informed on new topics and research around the industry, including soils, insects, diseases, and much more. It's also a great way to network with others around the state and beyond. Iowa is known for its crops, and that's why we're here. To learn more about becoming a certified crop advisor, visit iowacca.org.
In rural Iowa, you need reliable information. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network brings you ag-specific content like market trends, weather outlooks, and policy updates that matter to your operation, while your local station brings you community news and consistent updates on what is happening in your area. It's a partnership built for the challenges of rural life. Your farm, your local station, and your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters. Find us online at iowaagnet.com. Let's run down those basis bids for you here on this Wednesday on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Dustin Huffman. Only seeing 3 elevators make any price changes here today. Let's run down those bids. ADM Burlington 12 cents under on corn, $4.60. Soybeans 20 cents under at $11.87. Cargill Eddyville 22 cents under on corn, cash bid $4.50. New Co-op Algona 38 cents under on corn, $4.34. Soybeans 60 cents under, they're at $11.47 for the cash price. Ag State Sheldon 30 cents under on corn, $4.42. Soybeans 65 cents under at $11.42. Ag State Elta 35 cents under on corn, cash bid $4.37. Soybeans 60 cents under at $11.47. Cargill Cedar Rapids 20 cents under on corn, $4.52. Soybeans 30 cents under, cash price $11.77. Five Star Co-op Nashua 33 cents under on corn, $4.39. Soybeans 60 cents under at $11.47. Lincoln Way Energy Nevada's 27 cents under on corn, $4.45 for the cash bid. ADM Des Moines 25 cents under on soybeans, cash price $11.82. New Co-op Red Oak 32 cents under on corn, $4.40. Soybeans 60 cents under at $11.47. Mid-Iowa Cooperative Green Mountain 46 cents under on corn, $4.26 for the cash bid. Soybeans 76 cents under at $11.31. New Co-op Sheraton 31 cents under on corn, $4.41. Soybeans 60 cents under, they are at $11.47 for the cash bid. Walk-On Feed Ranch 47 cents under on corn, $4.25. Soybeans 68 cents under, $11.39. New Co-op Glidden 38 cents under on corn, cash bid $4.34. Soybeans 60 cents under, $11.47. Innovative Ag Farley 46 cents under on corn, $4.26. Soybeans 69 cents under, $11.38. And the Cargill Muscatine, they're 20 cents under on corn, $4.52. Soybeans 30 cents under at $11.77. Cash corn and soybean bids are subject to change without notice. Always check with your local elevator or making sales to obtain the most recent price. That's been a check of your basis numbers here on Iowa Ag Matters. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this.
Every county fair has that special person or family. They are there before the gates open and long after the lights go out, helping families with projects and pitching in wherever they're needed, never asking for recognition. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, along with Wiffles Hybrids, is honoring them with the Heart of the County Fair Award. 6 winners will be recognized locally and at the Iowa State Fair, with a plaque, cash prize, VIP passes, and food coupons. Don't delay. Nominations are due June 1st. Visit iowaagnet.com to nominate today. You're listening to Iowa Ag Matters, and it is time now for Riley Smith's conversation with Ken Dibert of BASF as he learns more about white mold management from BASF. And here's Riley with more.
Today we're talking about white mold, one of those things that soybean farmers are keeping an eye on every year. But for anybody who maybe needs a refresher, Ken, what all does white mold do to soybeans, and when does it start to impact that soybean crop?
Yeah, it's definitely a very aggressive disease, and certainly a disease we all want to keep our minds on in soybean growing areas, and certainly it tends to affect the soybean crop from canopy closure on. And once you've had a history of white mold in that field, whether it's from growing soybeans or crops like dry edible beans, canola, sunflowers, etc., it usually persists as a problem in future years. And, that's when we start making those applications from row closure on. And timing is absolutely critical for white mold applications. And we spend a lot of time talking about that in all of our customer meetings and time spent with farmers and ag chem retailers.
And that application window, we know, is shorter than it usually appears. I mean, by the time you see it, it's too late to start managing it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. White mold tends to affect or enter the soybean plant rather through dried flower tissue. And so normally indeterminate soybeans in the Midwest and the Northern Plains are growing. And basically from that, obviously as soon as we see that first bloom, that's at the R1 stage. But the problem with that stage and making applications, it tends to be a little bit too early. That's why we target that early R2 timing, and that's when you have one open flower or flower present on that main stem of the soybean plant and the upper two most nodes. And that, as a matter of fact, coincides very closely as well with row closure. So that tends to be our key indicators when those rows closed, or even a couple days ahead of that, is when we start making those first, or if it's only one application of a fungicide, that's when we want to target that initial application is at that early R2 timing. And certainly in some areas where white mold is a bigger problem and persists well into that season, we may be making multiple applications, maybe making up to two applications. And if you're going to be making 2 applications, you can target that first app, right at row closure, or that early R2, and then generally 2 weeks later, give or take, is when we would come in with that second application. But timing is absolutely critical when it comes to controlling white mold, because it's an aggressive disease, and we're just waiting. Once we've got these sclerotia, they're called, or these fruiting bodies, which is essentially the seed in the ground where white mold starts. Once we've got that in that soil, we're just waiting on moisture, waiting on rain events, heavy dews, a high moisture environment, and minimal air movement in that canopy. Once it's closed, is when white mold really starts to take off.
And then when we talk about that management, I mean, right now we want to be getting ahead of that white mold pressure. When it comes to product, looking at fungicides, what type of a fungicide should farmers be considering to make sure they are managing white mold most efficiently?
Yeah, absolutely. We're launching a brand new white mold offering in the white mold space in all 3 crops in our part of the world, in the Northern Plains: soybeans, dry beans, and canola. And this product's going to be called Zarina. This is going to be a convenient liquid formulated premix of 2 of our fungicides, Provosol fungicide and Endura fungicide. And now Endura has really been the gold standard for much of all white mold areas, or in these key soybean growing areas, if you will.
Endura fungicide has been our flagship brand there, and we're really building off that trusted product, very effective active ingredient in Boscalid, and we're putting that in this convenient premix now with Zarina. So launching that for the first time here in the 2026 growing season. Not only are we going to be targeting white mold, but we're also, especially in soybeans, expanding this disease footprint into frog eye leaf spot now as well. Frog eye leaf spot present in certainly the heart of the Midwest and the southern soybean growing areas, and where that disease obviously coexists with white mold as you move north from the Midwest and into the northern plains. We're going to be able to tackle both of those aggressive and persistent diseases with this convenient premix here in Zarina.
And I know as well, you mentioned having that premix and the convenience of it. I know that's of high value to farmers, not only being able to use that conveniently, but use it just in a way that's also just easy to use, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we're going to be registered in multiple crops, with soybean being a key crop there. We're going to target that 18.5 ounce per acre use rate in soybeans. There's a range. We can go up to 20 ounces in soybeans as well. But just on the very effectiveness of both of those active ingredients in both Provosol and Endura fungicide here in Zarina, and just making sure that we've got that timing right. That I can't stress that enough. We don't want to be too early. We don't want to be too late. And I would encourage anybody that is looking for more information on Zarina and to maybe consult with these experts to get this timing right. Visit with your local BASF AgChem retailer and or your local BASF business representative for more information on all of these details to make sure we get these applications right.
Well, Ken, lots of great information today, and thanks again for your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Hi, my name is Ethan Smith, and I've been a certified crop advisor in Iowa for about 6 years. The Iowa CCA program is valuable to me because it helps keep me informed on new topics and research around the industry, including soils, insects, diseases, and much more. It's also a great way to network with others around the state and beyond. Iowa is known for its crops, and that's why we're here. To learn more about becoming a certified crop advisor, visit iowacca.org.
Every county fair has that special person or family. They are there before the gates open and long after the lights go out, helping families with projects and pitching in wherever they're needed, never asking for recognition. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, along with Wiffles Hybrids, is honoring them with the Heart of the County Fair Award. 6 winners will be recognized locally and at the Iowa State Fair, with a plaque, cash prize, VIP passes, and food coupons. Don't delay. Nominations are due June 1st. Visit iowaagnet.com to nominate today. This is the Midday Market Update on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Mark Magnuson. Joined today by Garrett Arndorfer of agmarket.net for our midday market discussion. Garrett, we've seen a little bit of a pullback in the grains here this morning. Has that continued through midday?
It has continued through midday. Our grains have been seeing pressure all day. Even in the overnight, we saw some pressure. Leading into that was, I do believe, the announcement that Trump just came out with not too long ago that the U.S. is in the final stages of negotiations with Iran. That has really put a damper on crude oil as well, seeing that down right around $4. And so grains have really followed that crude oil drop going into midday here. Corn, some of it is even in the double digits, older crop, that's about 10, 11 cents. And so right around the same with soybeans. They're trading pretty equal there. Looking at your wheat, that's all in the red, spring wheat and winter wheat, but it's not quite as aggressive. Your spring wheat's only down a few cents and winter wheat is just slightly more. And that's following last week's big gains off of that WASDE report and the Kansas wheat tour.
Let's talk about the other side of the markets now. What's happening with the livestock trade?
Yeah, livestock is actually following grains today. Cattle are seeing a semi-aggressive day down with right around $4, $4.50 in feeders. That's a pretty good move. Live cattle are actually right around the same spot in that $4 range. that's just following kind of a consolidated range we've been in I'd say a week. We see a push higher, and then the next day it kind of seems to follow with a push lower, not really breaking a $10, $12 range that it's been in, but this consolidation is just either waiting on a headline or trying to figure out exactly where it wants to be coming into this grilling season.
And what's happening on the hog side?
On the hog side, hogs have just been in a downtrend technically. They can seem to get a little bit of a boost, but following that boost, they sell off a little bit lower than they were the week or two prior. That's what we're seeing right now. You know, last week we saw a pretty good bump going into that China trade talk, and hogs really got disappointed from that not being mentioned at all. It was kind of expected going in, but it would have been nice to get some sort of headline about them out of the deal.
Start your weekend with insight and inspiration on Weekend Ag Matters from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Every week we bring you an in-depth look at the top ag stories with a recap of the week's biggest headlines. Join us for long-format interviews with industry leaders and policymakers, giving you insights you won't hear anywhere else. And don't miss our faith-based segment with Russ Parker, Food for Thought, offering a perspective that helps bring clarity and focus to our lives. Make Weekend Ag Matters part of your weekend routine. Tune in every weekend on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
July corn down 12 cents at $4.63 1/4. July soybeans down 10 3/4 at $11.98 3/4. July soybean meal down $2.40 at $329.90. July soybean oil down 78 cents at $74.66. Chicago wheat down 8 3/4 at $6.58 1/2. Minneapolis wheat down 4 cents at $6.93. Kansas City hard red wheat down 6 cents at $6.97 3/4. July oats down 16 1/2 at $3.64. On the Merc, June live cattle down $2.95 at $251.60. August feeder cattle down $4.30 at $359.35. June lean hogs down 43 cents at $97.50. That was a check of the midday markets on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Mark Magnuson.
Well, we're back on Iowa Ag Matters, and we're going to run into the livestock side of things as we continue on our conversation with Jim McCormick of agmarket.net, talking about those cattle and hog prices. Cattle markets have been very volatile lately. He has more with Mark Magnuson.
What's happening on the livestock side of the trade today?
We are seeing a little bit of a correction in the cattle market. We're down about $2 today on these August cattle. June cattle right now, as we speak, are down about $1.17. Keep an eye on the 10-day moving average, which is at 251.61, and the 20-day moving average at 251.40 on the June contracts. Those are going to be some technical support levels. Maybe a little bit of uncertainty going on. We are going to be watching the stock market today. The NASDAQ's running today. I think NVIDIA's coming out with some earnings that could set the tone how that earnings plays out on the stock market in general, which will probably have a spillover effect in the livestock going into the major grilling season.
And how big of a win was it for the beef side of things when we talk about what we learned about with China and reopening things for U.S. beef?
I think it's very good. I mean, the fact of the matter is China was a big player buying U.S. beef. With them letting those licenses lapse, that hurt some of our demand. Bringing it back on is going to be positive for the beef. Now, the question is how much are they going to buy? Because the one thing about the U.S. beef is we have a very tight supply of this situation. And I'm not sure the American consumer is going to be really thrilled that we're selling a bunch of beef to China, because that will shrink the supply of beef here, maybe holding up or driving up the prices even more. So we'll see how much they actually buy. Like I said, they have been relatively aggressive buying Australian beef as our beef was shut out. So they're finding other suppliers. So we'll keep an eye on that.
What's happening on the hog side of the market?
On the hog side right now, we are selling off a little bit today on the, backing off a little bit. Now what we're watching to see if we can hold. We've scored some fresh lows early May, had a mid-month bounce. Now we're going down here as we wrap up May, trying to test those early lows. Technically, we're going to see if they can hold those lows. I would argue, essentially, hopefully they can hold it, because consumers continue to be pinched by these high gas prices, and that is forcing some consumers to move away from the high protein costs to the little bit cheaper proteins.
What's the best way for our listeners to get in touch for more marketing information?
If you have any questions, you can call me directly at 815-665-0461, reaching the Ag Market team members at 844-424-6758.
Jim McCormick, agmarket.net, my guest here today. Jim, thanks so much for the time. Always appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for having me on.
Every county fair has that special person or family. They are there before the gates open and long after the lights go out, helping families with projects and pitching in wherever they're needed, never asking for recognition. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, along with Wiffles Hybrids, is honoring them with the Heart of the County Fair Award. 6 winners will be recognized locally and at the Iowa State Fair, with a plaque, cash prize, VIP passes, and food coupons. Don't delay. Nominations are due June 1st. Visit iowaagnet.com to nominate today.
In rural Iowa, we know you're sold on your local radio station. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network partners with local Iowa stations to deliver the latest in agriculture news, including grain elevator prices, market reports, and ag policy news. Trusted local voices, trusted ag content. This message is brought to you by your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters.
Here on Iowa Ag Matters, we are now going to hear from the new Vice President of the National Pork Producers Council, Dustin Huffman, getting the chance to discuss Prop 12 and the Prop 12 fix in the Farm Bill. And Dustin has more.
Here with Todd Marotz. He is the Vice President of the National Pork Producers. Todd, thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
All right. So as a pork producer, obviously there's a lot of things we're watching, but also another thing that's kind of been on the back burner a little bit with the Farm Bill is Prop 12, but yet it's still very much a forefront issue. Where are things with that right now? What's going on? What are we doing to try to help farmers get around these state-run different legislative efforts to make almost 50 states, 50 different profiles of what we've got to do?
Yeah. It's hard to be in Washington, D.C. and not talk about the Farm Bill, and specifically for pork producers, Prop 12. Prop 12, right, the way it stands today, was able to come out of committee. We were very thankful to that. Hopefully we can keep it as part of the Farm Bill and be able to progress it because it's that important for pork producers.
And obviously, as we were saying, you know, if one state can dictate how everybody else grows the products that are sold in their state, that could lead to a slippery slope that would go beyond agriculture even.
Yeah, and it's not just about pork production at this point in time. It's about really about individual states with ballot initiatives, the way California did, and really creating a patchwork where it dictates how other states have to raise their livestock in order to sell it within an individual state.
All right, and so talk to us about what that Farm Bill is going to have entail, because obviously it went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said that's a Congress problem. They need to deal with it.
That's exactly right. And so that's what we're hoping is that Congress will take it to the next level and make sure that we can avoid the patchwork. And when you look at what California, the unintended consequences that happened there, pork prices went up 20%. And so bacon itself went up 16%, loins went up 32%. And so in a critical time where it's very important that people can get an affordable, nutritious protein, it just had the opposite effect and increased prices and decreased demand for our product.
And that's not good for farmers because obviously, like you said, right now, the protein groceries in general are expensive across the board. And obviously, like you said, other protein sources, they're enjoying a market high right now, so they're getting more money. But that's made pork a good alternative in the other 49 states.
That's exactly right. And, you know, we're very proud of our 60,000 pork producers that we represent and making sure that they can raise the livestock, and they are the welfare for those animals. They don't need somebody dictating the standard in which fits within their operation. And unfortunately, it's going to hurt the small and mid-sized farmers worse because of the capital improvements they're going to have to make with their facilities in order to meet Prop 12 requirements.
You know, we talk about it from a policy standpoint, but as a producer, up there in southern Minnesota, what are you hearing from other farmers? I mean, what are you guys making any changes to accommodate for that? Or are you guys just looking at you're not going to be able to sell in California?
Yeah, we're at a critical time right now because there's a lot of aging facilities and pork producers call and say, okay, what should I build? What should I remodel to? It's a huge capital investment for them to do it. And they want some sense of assurance that what they build and for multiple generations, they'll be able to raise livestock the right way.
And, you know, one thing we've talked about a lot, too, is people that don't understand it, consumers that put these through, they think it's an animal welfare issue. And, of course, you want to make sure animals are taken care of. But the thing is, what they're changing us for is actually putting some of these animals in more danger, especially when you talk about the gestation and the birth of the piglets themselves. And that's just not coming from producers. That's coming from the veterinarians as well. And so it's really about square footage and really has nothing to do with welfare. So what kind of things are you hearing, though, from farmers there? I mean, what's the changes being made? I mean, is it just a matter of mass confusion and waiting this out kind of thing? Yeah, I think everybody's in this limbo state that they there's nothing wrong with a free market. You set up a pricing structure, you set up a way to market their product, and let the producer decide whether or not they want to get into that or not. And
hi, my name is Ethan Smith, and I've been a certified crop advisor in Iowa for about 6 years. The Iowa CCA program is valuable to me because it helps keep me informed on new topics and research around the industry, including soils, insects, diseases, and much more. It's also a great way to network with others around the state and beyond. Iowa is known for its crops, and that's why we're here. To learn more about becoming a certified crop advisor, visit iowacca.org.
In rural Iowa, we know you're sold on your local radio station. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network partners with local Iowa stations to deliver the latest in agriculture news, including grain elevator prices, market reports, and ag policy news. Trusted local voices, trusted ag content. This message is brought to you by your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters.
And with that, we are going to put the wraps up on the show here for today. Of course, you can go to our website, iowaagnet.com, and check out our content anytime you want. Sign up for the e-newsletter. Don't forget to get those nominations in for the Heart of the County Fair Awards. You can find all that information on the website as well. Well, thanks to Mark, thanks to Riley, and of course, thanks to you for tuning in. Have yourself a great rest of your Wednesday. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.